When you look at women in Japan in their 50s or 60s, you notice it right away. Their skin looks smooth, clear, and quietly radiant. Nothing about it looks artificial or product heavy. And what they do to maintain it is far simpler than most people expect. The first step sounds fancy, but it's not. It's just washing your face twice, once with oil, once with foam. The first cleanse uses an oil cleanser to remove sunscreen, makeup, and pollution particles. Oil attracts oil, so it grabs everything sitting on your skin. Then you add water, it turns milky, and you rinse. The second cleanse uses a mild foam to remove sweat and leftover residue, anything water-based that the oil didn't catch. This matters in Japan because their cities are humid. That humidity traps pollution close to the skin. If you don't remove all of that properly, it clogs your pores and breaks down your skin barrier over time. Surveys show that over 60% of Japanese women who follow skincare use some form of double cleansing. It's not a trend. It's a habit passed down through generations. I started with this first. My skin felt genuinely clean afterward. Not tight, not stripped, just clean. Once my skin was properly clean, the next step was preparing it to actually absorb what came after. In Japan, they call it junbi kosui, preparation water. The toner isn't meant to exfoliate or tighten. It's meant to soften and prepare your skin for what comes next. Most people in the West wipe toner with a cotton pad. Japan doesn't do that. Cotton pads waste product. Instead, Japanese women pour toner directly into their palms, warm it up between their hands, then press it into their skin. Gently, firmly. These toners are often packed with hyaluronic acid. Hyaluronic acid can hold up to 1,000 times its weight in water. When you press that into your skin, it pulls moisture from the air and locks it in. Your skin plumps up. The tightness after washing disappears. I tried this next. It felt strange at first, but my skin drank it up. Everything felt softer. With my skin now softened and ready, the third step was about building hydration in layers. Japanese skincare doesn't believe in heavy creams. They believe in thin layers. The standard order goes like this: essence first, then emulsion, then moisturizer. The essence is the lightest, almost like water. It's packed with active ingredients that sink in fast. The emulsion is basically a lightweight lotion, thinner than a cream but thicker than a serum. Emulsions are wildly popular among Japanese women aged 40 to 70. They provide hydration without clogging pores. Then comes the moisturizer, usually a light gel or soft cream, just enough to seal everything in. Thin layers absorb faster and avoid pore blockage. They support long-term hydration without heaviness. I tried this third. 3 products felt like a lot, but each layer took only seconds to apply. My skin felt soft and bouncy when I was done. But all that cleansing and layering meant nothing without the fourth step. If there's one rule every Japanese woman follows, it's this: sunscreen. Every single day, not just when it's sunny. Every day, even indoors. Why? Because UVA rays pass through windows. They cause 80% of visible aging. They break down collagen. They create dark spots. Once that damage is done, it's permanent. Japanese sunscreens use advanced filters like Uvanul and Tinosorb. They're lightweight. They don't leave a white cast. Some are formulated as gels or essences, which makes reapplication easier throughout the day. I used a Japanese gel sunscreen for this step. It absorbed in seconds. No white streaks, no greasy shine, just protection. The fifth and final step wasn't something I did to my skin. It was something I did in the kitchen. Japanese skincare doesn't stop at the bathroom sink. It continues into what you eat. Typical Japanese meals include fish, tofu, seaweed, miso soup, and green tea. These aren't special health foods. They're everyday staples. Low sugar eating reduces glycation. Glycation is when excess sugar attaches to collagen and makes it stiff. That stiffness shows up as wrinkles and sagging. Japan is one of the world's top consumers of marine collagen supplements. Omega-3 fatty acids from fish improve skin elasticity. These aren't extreme diets. They're just practical eating patterns that support skin from the inside. For this final step, I made small shifts. Miso soup with seaweed and tofu for lunch. Green tea instead of my usual snack. Salmon with steamed vegetables for dinner. Nothing drastic, just practical. That was the 5-day routine. But the real question was, what would happen over time? By the end of week 1, the changes were subtle, not dramatic, but they were there. The kind of changes you notice when you look in the mirror first thing in the morning, before you've convinced yourself you're imagining things. My skin felt softer, genuinely softer, not the temporary softness you get right after applying moisturizer. This was different. This was my actual skin texture changing. The double cleansing was doing its job. Everything felt cleaner without feeling stripped. There was less dryness after washing because of the softening toner. That hydration step made a real difference. My skin didn't feel tight anymore. That uncomfortable pulling sensation after washing my face was just gone. A light glow started appearing on my cheeks. Nothing major, not the kind of glow you see in edited photos, just a slight brightness that wasn't there before. Like someone had turned up the contrast on my face by just a few notches. My skin looked more awake, more alive. I noticed reduced morning puffiness too. My face looked less swollen when I woke up. The bags under my eyes were smaller. My jawline looked more defined. The low-sugar meals were probably helping with that. Less inflammation meant less water retention. My face wasn't holding on to fluid the way it used to. The SPF was preventing new redness from sun exposure. I wasn't getting those tiny red patches I usually got from walking outside. You know the ones. Those little irritated spots that show up on your cheeks after you've been in the sun for even 20 minutes. They weren't appearing anymore. My skin was protected. My skin texture felt smoother, still subtle. But when I ran my fingers over my face, it felt more even, less rough. The tiny bumps on my forehead were starting to flatten. The rough patches on my chin were softening. Everything felt more uniform. What surprised me most during this first week was how quickly my skin responded. I expected to wait longer for any kind of change, but consistency, even for just 7 days, was already making a difference. These were surface-level changes, not the kind of thing anyone else would notice yet. But I could feel the difference. My skin was responding to consistency. It was like my skin had been waiting for me to actually take care of it properly. By week 2, the changes became more noticeable. Not just to me. Other people started asking if I'd done something different. My coworker asked if I'd gotten a facial. My friend asked if I was using a new foundation. I wasn't. I was just sticking to the routine. My pores looked smaller, especially around my nose. That area that always looked a little rough, a little textured, was smoothing out. The consistent cleansing was keeping them clear. When pores aren't clogged, they naturally look smaller. It's not that the pores themselves shrink, they just look tighter, more refined, less obvious. My skin tone appeared more even. The redness around my nose and chin had faded significantly. Those areas that always looked a little irritated, a little inflamed, were calming down. Everything looked more balanced, more uniform. My complexion was evening out in a way that felt natural, not covered up. My skin felt bouncier. That's the best way to describe it. When I pressed my finger into my cheek, it bounced back faster. The layered hydration was working. My skin was plumper. It had more resilience, more elasticity. It felt younger, not in some abstract way, in a tangible, physical way. I noticed fewer tiny bumps on my forehead. Those little closed comedones that never quite turned into pimples but never went away either. They were disappearing. The gentle daily cleansing was acting like a mild exfoliation. Dead skin wasn't building up anymore. My skin was turning over more efficiently. There was less oiliness in my T-zone. My forehead and nose weren't getting shiny by midday anymore. My skin was balanced, not too dry, not too oily, just normal, just comfortable. I wasn't reaching for blotting papers. I wasn't touching my face constantly to check if it felt greasy. Fine lines around my eyes started to soften. They weren't gone, but they looked lighter, less deep. Hydration was filling them in from the inside. When I smiled, the lines didn't crease as sharply. They looked softer, more like natural expression lines and less like permanent grooves. People kept saying I looked rested. That was the word they used. Rested. Like I'd just come back from a vacation. like I'd been getting 10 hours of sleep every night. But I wasn't sleeping any differently. I wasn't doing anything dramatically different except this routine. And somehow, that was enough to make people notice. The improvements during week 2 felt validating. This wasn't just me being hopeful. This was real change that other people could see. My skin was genuinely improving. By week 3, the anti-aging benefits became clear. My skin wasn't just cleaner or more hydrated. It was actually changing structurally. The foundation of my skin was improving. This wasn't surface level anymore. This was deeper. My skin barrier felt stronger. I could tell because I wasn't getting irritated anymore. Products that used to sting a little didn't sting at all. My skin could handle things it couldn't before. Cold weather, dry air, wind, even the harsh indoor heating that usually made my skin feel tight and uncomfortable. None of it bothered me anymore. My skin had built up resilience. Fine lines appeared lighter from constant hydration. The ones around my eyes and mouth looked softer. They were still there. I'm not going to pretend they disappeared completely, but they didn't look as pronounced. They looked like they'd been filled in from underneath, like my skin had more cushioning, more support. My skin was clearer, fewer breakouts, less inflammation. The occasional pimple that used to show up predictably every couple weeks just wasn't appearing as often. And when I did get a small blemish, it healed faster. Within days instead of weeks, my skin was healthier. It could repair itself more efficiently. It had the resources it needed to handle damage. My cheeks looked firmer, slightly lifted, like my face had more structure. The sagging that I'd started to notice, that subtle downward pull that happens with age, seemed to have reversed slightly. The collagen-rich eating was probably contributing to that. Skin needs building blocks from the inside, and I was finally giving my body what it needed to maintain my skin properly. The area under my eyes looked smoother, less dull. That tired, shadowy look was fading. I didn't look exhausted anymore. Even on days when I actually was tired, my face didn't show it as much. The darkness under my eyes had lightened. The hollowness had filled in slightly. I looked more refreshed. Hyperpigmentation was fading slightly. The dark spots on my cheeks were lighter, not gone, but definitely lighter. Those sunspots that had been sitting there for years, that I thought were permanent, were actually responding to consistent care. The consistent SPF was preventing new damage, while my skin healed the old damage. It was a double effect. Protection and repair happening at the same time. Breakouts healed faster. When a pimple appeared, it was gone within days instead of weeks. There was no lingering red mark, no dark spot left behind. My skin just healed cleanly and moved on. That was new. That was something my skin hadn't been able to do in years. These weren't surface changes anymore. These were structural improvements. My skin was functioning better. It was healthier at a cellular level. And that health was showing up in ways that felt almost miraculous, but were really just the result of giving my skin what it needed consistently. By the end of 1 month, the transformation was undeniable. My skin had achieved a more hydrated, even, stable appearance. This wasn't just good lighting or a lucky day. This was a consistent, measurable change. When I looked at photos from 4 weeks earlier, I could see the difference clearly. My skin looked fundamentally different. The collagen-rich eating had improved firmness around my jawline. That area looked tighter, more defined, less soft. The slight jowling that had started to develop was less noticeable. My face looked more sculpted, more lifted. Like I'd gotten a subtle facelift, except I hadn't. I'd just been eating fish and taking care of my skin. Sunspots and discoloration had lightened noticeably. The dark patches on my cheeks were significantly lighter. Some had almost disappeared. The ones that remained were so faint that they didn't bother me anymore. I didn't feel the need to cover them with makeup. They just looked like natural variation in my skin tone rather than obvious damage. My texture was smoother and more refined. When I looked at my skin up close in the mirror, it didn't look rough or uneven. It looked smooth, almost polished. The enlarged pores that used to dot my nose and cheeks were barely visible. The fine lines that used to catch the light were softened. Everything looked more uniform, more youthful. Wrinkles looked softer, but natural. They weren't erased. I still had expression lines. I still looked like myself. But they looked like healthy aging. Not premature aging, there's a difference. Healthy aging looks like well-maintained skin that's accumulated some natural lines from living. Premature aging looks damaged, neglected. Mine looked healthy now. Makeup applied more evenly. The foundation didn't cling to dry patches or settle into lines. It just glided on smoothly and stayed put. It looked like skin, not like makeup sitting on top of skin. And honestly, some days I didn't need foundation at all. Just a light concealer under my eyes and maybe some powder. And I was good. That was something I hadn't been able to do in years. My overall appearance looked younger. Not because of dramatic changes, not because I looked like a different person, but because of reduced inflammation and steady moisture. My skin looked calm, balanced, healthy. It looked like skin that was being taken care of properly. Skin that wasn't stressed or damaged or neglected. The transformation wasn't about looking like a different person. It was about looking like the best version of myself. The version where my skin was being taken care of properly, consistently, every single day. The version where I was giving my skin what it needed instead of just hoping it would figure things out on its own. People noticed. Not everyone commented directly, but I could see them looking. I could see them trying to figure out what was different. Some people asked about cosmetic procedures. Some asked about expensive treatments. When I told them it was just a simple routine and some diet changes, they seemed almost disappointed, like they wanted it to be more complicated. Simple things couldn't possibly work that well, but it did work. These 5 habits weren't complicated. They weren't expensive. They weren't secret. Double cleansing, softening toner, light layering, daily SPF, skin-friendly eating. Together, they created a system, a routine, a way of taking care of skin that didn't feel like work. It just felt like living. And over time, that consistency compounded into results that were impossible to ignore. Results that made me look in the mirror and feel genuinely happy with what I saw. Results that made me realize that taking care of your skin doesn't have to be complicated or expensive or time-consuming. It just has to be consistent. And that consistency, more than any expensive product or fancy treatment, is what creates real, lasting change.